good blessings, my brothers and sisters in this truth. All praises to the Most High. Through our Savior's name, let's get our sword out the mud.
Suburban residents are a coveted voting bloc in this election, but historians say the term is about a lot more than a picket fence and its reputation. Whether you see it as bad or good, it comes from right here in Chicago. Merriam-Webster defines a suburb as an outlying part of a city or town. Or smaller community adjacent to or within commuting distance of a city. Its first use dates back to the 14th century England, but the impact of what the word would go on to mean politically, financially, and socially was decided much closer to home.
A suburban sinner used to be a term that meant a prostitute. It was, you pushed the vice industries outside of town. Things outside the walls of the European villages were seen as literally subpar. Our understanding of suburbs as a fairly prestigious, mostly residential, and probably white space, that came in the late 19th century.
White space.
Industrialization.
Elaine Lewonek is a professor of American Studies at California State University, Fullerton, and author of the book, The Working Man's Reward, Chicago's Early Suburbs and the Roots of American Sprawl.
In 1870, there were African American people in every ward of the city and most of the suburbs. But they were a minority. There were only 15,000 African Americans in Chicago at a time when the population of Chicago was 1 million. They were welcomed everywhere.
But after the turn of the century, slowly started to change. Blacks living in many suburbs were being pushed out by segregated hospitals and schools, and racist Jim Crow era practices like sundown rules, which suggests that blacks and other people of color not only shouldn't be living in all white neighborhoods, but that being there after dark, even for business, could result in harassment or violence.
There was this new idea that African Americans, by their very presence, were robbing their neighbors of property values. And that got discussed in Chicago and promoted in Chicago through the real estate board and through neighborhood groups that eventually led to institutionalized bureaucratic banking policy that we call redlining.
Redlining refers to a process by which banks and other financial institutions mark off certain neighborhoods and refuse to make loans there. And it's called redlining because of the idea that they would put red lines on a map around certain neighborhoods and say, in this area, we do not loan. And the
Talking about voting. Kick rocks, boy. Oh, boy, look at here. People want to get mad when you tell them that you ain't voting or don't vote for man. Get mad at you real quick. What you mean you ain't voting?
because of the idea that they would put red lines on a map around certain neighborhoods and say, in this area, we do not loan.
The world is your enemy and you steadily trying to take a vote to make the enemy better. The world don't support you with truth. The world oppresses you. But let's vote. Man, look at here. Man, look at here. All praises to the Most High through our Savior. All you can do is pray. That's all you can do. You know. Let's vote for a better oppression. Vote for the lesser of two evils. See how dumb that sounds? with it. What you talking about?
Areas were areas that were either minority, African American, or some kind of mix.
Vero Satter, Rutgers University history professor, wrote the book Family Properties: How the Struggle Over Race and Real Estate Transformed Chicago and Urban America.
There's a reason why the word suburb implies white, and the word urban, at least until quite recently, implied black. Construction of many of the newer suburbs that were built right after World War II, there were conditions written into their loans that developers had to get from the banks in order to build those properties that said, if you sell any of your newly built properties to blacks, you cannot get this loan.
The spatialized, racialized color line was reinforced not just through the bureaucratic forms of redlining, but also through people bombing other people's apartments, people destroying it. In Chicago, people got punched at the communion rail in church because parishes.
Remember, vote, okay? Remember, that's what they tell you. Don't forget to vote. Don't forget to register.
About African Americans coming in.
Most Chicago.
You a coon if you voting. Go ahead and go ahead and stand in that line and go ahead and vote for a system that oppresses you. It's stupid. And we wonder why we're in a position, because we constantly lean on our own understanding. We don't never want to lean on the Most High. We want to make the world a better place for you and for me without the Most High. Quit it. It's ridiculous, man. Ridiculous. We get it together.
Of a certain age have a vague memory of blockbusting, which was when speculators would come into white urban neighborhoods and say, black people are coming, we're going to buy your property for a little less than you paid for it, but you'll be lucky to get out at all.
One of the tools that really...
I'm going to run that back one more time.
Parishes worried about African Americans coming in.
Most Chicagoans of a certain age have a vague memory of blockbusting, which was when...
Okay, now... Are we familiar with Blockbuster? Before Netflix came and put them out, before Netflix came, the streaming services came and put Blockbuster out of business. Blockbuster is where you got your movies, your VHSs, your tapes, and that's where you would go rent your movies. Your DVDs. It's called Blockbuster. And it just shows you how they title stuff to get you to honor. To get you to honor wickedness. So we not having no knowledge and constantly leaning on this system and trusting this world that we go and we do not research. So they hit us with blockbusting, and then they come out with a business called Blockbuster. For the same people that they was blockbusting against, they bring out a business called Blockbuster for everyone to go in and pay homage. So not even knowing, when we're partaking in this world, we pay homage to our destruction, not even knowing. It's like the killer, the murderer, being at the funeral of the person that he murdered. You see? Because the world makes sure that it tries its best to come after and persecute and murder the children of the Most High. But at the same time, will stand there and tell you feel me, will stand there and tell you that everything is all good. That everything is all good. I'm going to punch you in the face and I'm going to tell you, and then I want your vote. My dear brothers and sisters. My dear brothers and sisters.
Speculators would come into white urban neighborhoods and say, black people are coming, we're going to buy your property for a little less than you paid for it, but you'll be lucky to get out at all.
One of the tools that real estate developers used was restrictive covenants and deed restrictions, which in some cases very explicitly said,
you see how the world got their covenants? The Most High got his covenants.
this property may never be owned by or never be inhabited by anyone not of the Caucasian race.
As much as it was about race, the color that also played a big role was green.
They wanted to keep the black neighborhoods black. They wanted to keep the white neighborhoods white so that there was confidence in the stability of the market, because these programs came about in the wake of the Great Depression, when home values and the financial sector was thrown into upheaval.
Author and Virginia Tech history professor Liddell Windling is also one of the core collaborators of Mapping Inequality, Redlining in New Deal America. It's a website based on documents that detailed how 150 different cities were redlined. The research for the project led right back here to Chicago. At Northwestern University, where in the 30s, economists and the National Association of Realtors worked together to establish best practices for the growing profession of real estate. So after surveying realtors at the time, the federal government's Homeowners Loan Corporation classified neighborhoods into 4 distinct categories that range from A, which was seen as the best, areas like Lake Forest and Evanston, B, still desirable, and C, undesirable. And then the worst was D, hazardous.
Their model for how American cities developed was based on the model of Chicago. So the central areas and kind of the south side and black belt were more or less deemed hazardous or undesirable. And if there was a large proportion of residents who were of European immigrants, as well as Jewish, then they were often given a C rating as declining.
The ratings came with very descriptive and disturbing explanations. This one, Windling reads, is for Chicago's Westtown neighborhood.
This is one of the poorest areas around the Chicago Loop. Population is predominantly Italian. There's a marked infiltration of Negro from the area on the south. Most properties are little better than minimum shelter. The section has no future, but a slum clearance project could well be located in this district. Neighborhood is graded 4th class, D, redlined.
And redlining didn't just keep residents out, it discouraged businesses.
It's even harder to get any kind of individual or corporate investment in a place, and so it kind of traps a neighborhood.
Housing is never just housing. It's connected to respectability, health, wealth, and multi-generational wealth. And people whose families weren't allowed that, they don't get to inherit that. So now the average black family's wealth is only 1/10 the average white family's wealth. and all kinds of things that are race neutral. If you look up maps of where
Run that
people
back
have
real quick.
wealth, is only 1/10 the average white family's wealth. And all kinds of things that are race neutral. If you look up maps of where people have the biggest college debt, it matches the map of redlining from the 1930s.
Wendling says education and information leads to empathy, and empathy is what's needed to continue forward with fairness for all Americans.
The creation of the housing and financial sector we have now took a long time to create, and it's going to take a long time to unwind and rehabilitate and repair.
Brothers and sisters, stay prayerful and keep your lamps filled with light.